So Sonic Superstars released a while back, and before its release, one of the questions fans immediately asked was, did the Mania team work on it? The answer to that was no, so after most of us cried on the inside, the second thing we asked was, is it at least using the Sonic Mania engine, the retro engine? It was the engine used to recreate Sonic 1, 2 CD on the mobile ports and the brand new 3 and Knuckles for Sonic Origins. Sega has supposedly bought the engine, so did they use it for Superstars? The answer again was no. Also investigating, it seems like they didn't buy it, so most fans were concerned, but as people played demos at certain events, people saw that the Mania physics were recreated. But finally playing it for ourselves, we definitely can see that the Mania physics, the physics from the classics, were recreated. So now we are excited, but why do so many fans like myself want to get the retro engine just because of physics? Most of us can't even do the math to know about physics, so where is that demand coming from? Well, classic Sonic games had physics that made it fun to go fast. That was more of a thing in the classic games. So were those games that fun to the point where we beg for the same physics now? Well, let's dive deep into it. I'm a Sonic fan, I love these games, so what does each classic game bring to the table, and why are we 30 years later, are we still asking for this? Well, let's start the journey with the one that started it all. Sonic the Hedgehog. This character's been going strong for 30 years and has been the face of Sega ever since. While some say Yakuza's taken that spot, Sonic still remains to be their most popular and best performing franchise. But Sonic wasn't always their mascot. Back in 1990, they didn't have one. It was supposedly this guy, but this ain't it. So, a couple of people began to make a game for the Sega Genesis, and they were influenced by a lot of different things, from Michael Jackson's style, Theodore Roosevelt, and the Sega logo colors, and they just were tossing around a bunch of ideas. While some ideas were left on the cutting room floor, some of them were kept or used later in the future. They ended up creating a bunch of sketches for a character. They had a bunny who is now DLC for Superstars, and an armadillo who eventually became Mighty, but settled with a hedgehog. They made him blue, gave him shoes, and when Naoto Oshima finished his design, Sonic the Hedgehog was born, along with an egg-shaped Teddy Roosevelt-looking scientist named Dr. Robotnik. These two were now the stars of the newly developed game Sonic the Hedgehog, which was released on June 23rd, 1991. Sega now had their mascot, and this game killed it. Not only did it set the path to defeat Nintendo's monopoly in video games, but Sega of America included it with the Sega Genesis to push units, and damn, did it push units. I may not have been alive at the time, but for the people who were, if you thought of two video game characters, it was always Sonic and Mario, maybe Pac-Man. But now, the two play Olympics together, and I wouldn't be surprised if the two go get coffee from time to time. But that is how Sonic started, and he had something Mario didn't: speed. And no, I'm not talking about your drug. He had actual speed. His name is Sonic after all, so the start of his adventure was a fast, simple story to get the game started. Dr. Robotnik has captured all these creatures and has turned them into robot henchmen. Sonic runs across a South Island and sees that there are animals in troubles. He rescues some of them and then he sees Robotnik. The evil doctor traps the animals, and seeing this, Sonic goes to stop him. After traveling through 6 zones, collecting the Chaos Emeralds, and reaching the final zone to stop the evil doctor, Sonic beats his final machine, defeats Robotnik, and saves South Island, heading off to his next adventure. That's it! Look, we don't even know who these two are. This is the first game in the franchise, so it works. We just met these two. So let's establish that Sonic is the guy who stops the man in saving the animals. That's it. The story was super simple, so something must have caught the general audience's eyes, because games like Final Fantasy or Shining Force, those were the RPG games that kinda dived into the story. Platformers didn't really do that so much, so what was it that caught people's eyes? Besides the fact that this was bundled with the console and was cheaper than the SNES, that's where the gameplay comes in. Since Sonic is a platformer, he has what most basic platformers have. He can run left to right, jump on enemies, and go through the levels to reach the goal. However, there were things that set Sonic apart. One of them was the fact that Sonic collects rings instead of coins. However, unlike Mario, at the time, Sonic's rings played more than just increasing the score and getting an extra life after 100. Sonic can take a hit with just one ring. The more rings Sonic has, the more comes out when he gets hit. He loses all of his rings, but can recollect some of them and take another hit, except when drowning, spikes, technically, and being crushed. Another one that set him apart was his speed. I mentioned this earlier. The speed was an important factor for Sonic. While running, Sonic can roll into a ball to not only defeat enemies but to break walls and monitors. This can also increase Sonic's speed. By rolling while on a slope, Sonic will pick up speed and go faster and faster. This was one of the defining characteristics for Sonic. Going through the levels fast was the key. This is very fun and became the staple for Sonic. It allowed players to go and have a blast. While the levels were great and very detailed and just overall pretty, just look at these graphics. Beautiful. Sometimes you could just blast through them. You couldn't do that in some levels. And that's kind of the problem for Sonic 1. Sonic 1's level design is not really geared towards going fast. Green Hill Zone and Starlight Zone and somewhat Spring Yard Zone are, but Marble Zone and Labyrinth Zone, they really aren't. Scrap Brain Zone too, but that's kind of the final zone in the game, so I can cut it some slack. It increases the challenge. Honestly though, Marble and Labyrinth, yeah, no. Honestly, these sections are a mixed bag for me, because while some areas are cool, and if you play your cards right, can be done fast, certain sections make you wait and slow down. Labyrinth Zone specifically, because Sonic can't swim. For some reason, somebody at Sega didn't open a textbook and thought hedgehogs couldn't swim, so they made it so Sonic could not swim underwater, making Labyrinth Zone hard, especially for first timers. Being underwater not only slows Sonic down, but unlike most of his video game compatriots, Sonic can't breathe underwater, adding an extra challenge. But you could also see this as a unique factor. This not only puts pressure on the player, but it also makes it so you have to get a bubble while underwater or just get out of the water. Once you understand this, it can be less tense, but when you hear that drowning music, it will scare you. The water slows you down, but still, even Labyrinth Zone has certain paths to avoid the slowness. Marble Zone, you really can't. So this is the blast processing experience. While some zones might be slow, the overall level design is fine. I don't think it excels just yet, but it is still fun to play through. Sonic 1's level design is the start, so obviously it's gonna be basic. But no matter what level you're in, you're gonna have obstacles. They're gonna be in your way no matter what. But remember, since throughout all the levels, there are countless rings scattered across the zones, you can be safe, or at least feel safe since you can take a hit. This is not only a staple, like come on, everyone knows what collecting a ring sounds like, but an easier way for players to keep going. Since Sonic is so fast, you're gonna have to react quickly. If not, you're gonna get hurt. While some may see it as speed making the game harder, and I've seen arguments about that, I think this is fine because by the end of the day, Sonic is still a platformer and you could take it slow. The rings let you take a hit, and because you collect so many, you can get another one right away. So you can keep taking the hits, and I think that's cool. Not just that, but if you incorporate the speed, that's something that Sonic doesn't have, and it can make it really, really cool. Some areas are slow, yeah, but the only two levels in the entire game force you to slow down: Labyrinth Zone and Marble Zone, and certain sections of Spring Yard Zone, so it's not even the majority of the game. I don't think this is peak level design like I was saying earlier, but it was definitely a start. Besides, at the time Sonic 1 came out, it was really the first time a platformer would encourage going fast. The levels have loop-de-loop, tunnels to send Sonic flying, and badnik bouncing. These were ways Sonic could keep the speed going, and if done just right, Sonic was going super fast. Hell, Green Hill Zone Act 1 can be beaten in under 30 seconds. That's just looking at the basics of the game. However, Sonic 1 has different ways to get to the end. The special thing about Sonic's level designs overall is that there are always, usually, multiple pathways to go to. You can see this as early as Green Hill Act 2. You have top areas and bottom areas that hide different goodies for you to find. It can also be shorter or longer depending on where you go through the level. This kind of design is a staple for Sonic games, and it started here. Usually the higher path is the most rewarding, but it's the hardest to stay on. The bottom path, while easier to reach, can quite possibly take the longest. This is how Sonic 1 designs its levels. There are multiple different pathways to choose from, and so many different ways to reach the goal. If you do decide to explore, you may find a bunch of rings or TV monitors that hold some power-ups or items for Sonic. Across the stages are these TV monitors, and when Sonic breaks, we'll receive whatever's inside. You can find monitors that when broken give Sonic 10 rings. That's really the only non-power-up Sonic can find. These monitors also include an invincibility that gives Sonic a bunch of stars, and for a while will make Sonic invincible to everything except being crushed and drowning. There are the speed shoes, which increase Sonic's speed and allow you to move even faster. And lastly, you have the shield, which can protect Sonic from one hit before he loses his ring. This is a must-have if you want the best ending. Have you noticed this giant ring at the end of the level? If you collect 50 rings and reach the end, then you can enter a special stage. By jumping into the giant ring, Sonic enters these dimensions that hold a Chaos Emerald. These stages are like mazes. You have to go go and find where the emerald is exactly. However, there are goals that if you hit will take you out of the special stage and back into the zones. I don't understand why they're labeled as goals. What? They may be labeled as your goal, but these are actually obstacles along with others you can find across the stages. The stages are constantly spinning, and by hitting the up and down circles you can increase or decrease the speed of the spin. You also have bumpers that can launch Sonic to a direction depending on the angle. Sonic can be launched towards the emerald or towards the goal, so be careful. There are also circles with the letter R that change the rotation of the spinning special stage, and lastly, the special stages have these gems that Sonic needs to stay on in order to make them disappear and get the emerald. These are gonna be the things you have to get rid of before grabbing that emerald. The special stages are also a great way to gather continues. The special stages have a bunch of rings, and by collecting enough you can obtain a continue. This can help you through your regular journey, since when you get a game over it will let you start again. These can be quite helpful in the original game. You can dive more into that later. After collecting all the Chaos Emeralds, Sonic will get the good ending, which just makes more flowers appear at the end and Robotnik gets all mad. That's it. Honestly, this is the game that's probably the least important to get the emeralds on, as the two endings barely change anything. Fighting the bosses doesn't change either whether you get the emeralds or not. The bosses in Sonic 1 are pretty basic. Just jump into Robotnik when presented the chance. That's it. To be honest, Sonic bosses aren't the most exciting, to be honest. It's just avoiding something and jumping into the boss to damage it. That's it. The final zone is just a boss that isn't that challenging either. That's Sonic 1 though. It's the start of the franchise, so the level design isn't amazing, but it sets the foundation. That's the best way to describe the original Sonic 1. It's setting the groundwork for the franchise, and I mean, it clearly did a good job because we got 30 years of this groundwork. It's not bad by any means, but it's not excelling in its full potential. Again, we've had 30 years to really learn how to make this fun. The music, however, is still one thing that always excels. Sonic used composer Masato Nakamura, bassist of Dreams Come True, to make the music, along with Hiroshi Kubota and Yukifumi Makino as the programmers, and Makino made the drowning music and Emerald jingle. Sonic 1 has one of the most iconic zones in gaming, but also a great soundtrack. Starlight Zone is one of my favorites, but during the symphony, that special stage music made me tear up. The soundtrack is great and nostalgic for me. Even at the start, Sonic always had great music. One of his defining features is probably his music. I mean, his speed is still one of them, but Jesus, this music, man. It's one of the things that has also set him apart. Since Sonic 1 is the foundation, it allowed Sonic to have his defining features, but also set that groundwork. Even though speed is Sonic's main characteristic, you can still go explore. The level design gives players the freedom to explore or to beat the levels as fast as possible. Take your time exploring and go see what you can find and go at your own pace, or run through these levels like a madman, because you can. The only question now is which way is the best way to play, because most of the footage you have seen is an emulated version of the original game, but other versions exist. The original Genesis version is a cool way to play, but we have others. Not just that, getting a working Genesis with a cartridge of Sonic 1 is probably going to be expensive, so there are other options for people looking to play Sonic's first game. There is the Christian Whitehead port on iOS and mobile devices. Legend to the Sonic community, Christian Whitehead, along with Headcanon, worked on porting Sonic 1 to mobile. They remade the game using that retro engine, the same engine they used to make Sonic Mania. This engine's amazing. The engine has been used since way before that. With the engine, they were able to recreate Sonic 1 while adding new stuff. For starters, the spike glitch is gone. The original game wouldn't give you invincibility frames when getting damage after a bed of spikes, making it so you would die instantly. The Christian Whitehead port gets rid of this and also adds Tails and Knuckles into the original Sonic 1. Sonic 1 never had Tails and Knuckles playable, but thanks to this port, now they can explore Green Hill Zone for the first time. Not just that, but they also added other features in debug mode, like turning on the speed cap and turning on the spike glitch again. I don't know why you would do that, but they also added a 7 special stage, making it so Super Sonic is now in Sonic 1. The only downside is that they require entering specific cheat codes into Sonic 1. Most people aren't gonna know about that, and hell, I didn't know about that either, and I'm a Sonic fan. They also added a time attack mode for the mobile port, which can be fun trying to beat the game as fast as possible, and here you can see how fast you can theoretically beat the game. Other than that, the game is free with ads and $1 with no ads, so this is a pretty good deal. God damn, really? If you are on the go or at work, don't tell your boss, or something, you can play this wherever. Hell, with the addition of Tails and Knuckles, some levels were given certain areas specifically for them. As of now, I have found only one, so maybe it's just the one, but who knows? Maybe there's other sections we haven't discovered, or I haven't discovered. But that's not the only port you have. Sonic Origins Plus, a collection of classic Sonic Sonic games. If you get just the digital Origins version, it comes with Sonic 1, CD, 2, and 3 and Knuckles. If you get the Plus version, you not only get a physical version with an art book, but it comes with all 12 Game Gear Sonic titles. The Digital Plus version only comes with the Game Gear titles, but both versions of Origins Plus come with, now for the first time in Sonic history, a playable classic Amy. See, modern Amy has been playable as early as Sonic Adventure for 3D and Sonic Advance for 2D. Mind you, if you just count just being able to play as her, technically Sonic Drift and Sonic Art count for classic Amy, but if you count actually playable in a mainline game, Origins Plus is the first time she is playable in a mainline classic game. Emphasis on classic games. So Amy's now playable in Sonic 1, making this one addition that the phone version doesn't have. It also comes with brand new additions. For starters, intro cutscenes and ending cutscenes for Sonic 1, showing how Sonic's first adventure got started, and even explaining why Sonic 1 only had 6 emeralds. That's a silly thing that most people will just brush off, but for Sonic fans, oh my gosh, we have an answer. It just said, oh shoot, I'm late, my bad boys. And then they go to Sonic 2. That's it. Look, we don't need a massive explanation, but the fact that they still explained, it shows that they were trying to make this franchise more consistent with the lore. Not just that, Origins also includes mirror mode for Sonic 1, where the levels are now flipped, and oh my gosh, this is a way to play the game, but it feels wrong. It's different. It's no longer hold right to win anymore. So you might get some enjoyment here. It also includes a boss rush to beat with only 3 lives and no rings until a certain point. Lastly, you also have classic mode, which turns the game back to 14:9. The only problem is this isn't an accurate version of Sonic 1, but you can make it by inserting a simple cheat code in the title. You can make it so you can turn on the speed caps, spike glitch, and turn off the spin dash. Since normally with classic mode, it only turns off the drop dash. That's another thing in Mirror and Anniversary mode. The drop dash was added, making this the best version in my opinion. I love the drop dash, what can I say? But there's so many ways to play Sonic 1. You can find an emulator if you purchase the Sega Genesis before Sega delisted them. You can play it there. Thanks, Sega. Nintendo Switch Online Genesis, which has an accurate version as well. There's also the Sega Genesis collections, a lot of the Sega Genesis collection. There's so many ways to play. Sonic Generations has it after unlocking the Genesis, and hell, for a while you could even play this on a Tesla before it was removed. There are so many ways to play, and Sonic 1 is a short, fun time. I would say that out of the classics, this is the weakest entry, but still not bad by any means. It set the foundation and is a fun time, and overall a blast to go fast and stop Robotnik. Sonic 1 is a lot of fun and a great way to see what made Sonic be one of the most iconic characters in gaming. If you can play it, give it a shot. There are so many ways to play that you have so many options to play it. With all that said, you guys have a good one and take care.